I am live. Outstanding. So, hey, everybody out there and whoever watches this video. My name is Richard Stack. I'm a retired captain from the U.S. Army, where I've had a very long career stemming through the Marine Corps for my 8-year tour and then joining the Army Reserves into the California National Guard, where due to unfortunate circumstances, I was medically retired officially in 2013. So the intent behind this video is, after dealing with many of the acronyms that us military members are given after combat tours and what we're doing overseas, I wanted to make this video to kind of reach out to any of my brothers and sisters that are struggling. And I want to talk about my story and give my story to them so that they can hear possibly something they can associate with. And, if they're having issues in their lives where they need someone to talk to, or they need some help, or they're struggling, I want to be there for them. Many people have been there for me. It's taken me a long time to really admit to a lot of things, I'll tell you, and a lot of therapy. But at this point in my life, I'm comfortable enough where I want to talk about my story and open my story up with others so that, if that veteran is at that point, at least they know there's a voice, there's someone that will listen, and that's there for them. And I think that's important because of the job that many of us veterans have done. And a lot of it's very hard to talk about. So going back to my story, as I stated, I'm a retired captain from the U.S. Army. I did serve in the Marine Corps. So after about 10 years ago, 9 years and about 3 months, I was in Afghanistan doing my second combat tour, working with an amazing battalion out of out of Vermont. And I was the battalion S2 Alpha, which is basically the intelligence officer's little guy, so to speak. But the mission that I had there was absolutely amazing. At the time I deployed to Afghanistan, I was probably about 36, 37, I believe. 37, actually, because I was in country for my birthday, my 37th. I went there with a different perspective. I went there with a perspective of understanding what we could do better for them. Because at the time, we talked about giving them, machinery for their agriculture and doing other things, and we just didn't realize that ultimately didn't work. What they really wanted was roads, and maybe sometimes they just wanted somebody to listen to. So being deployed in the eastern province of Afghanistan in what they called the Paktika province, I got to work with such an amazing battalion. Out of the companies, it was working with each company, and as an intelligence officer, what my job is I was able to get on a helicopter, fly to each one of the FOBs whenever I wanted to, forward operating bases, or COBs, where companies were called company operating bases. And I was there to really assess kind of their environment, work with the platoon leaders and kind of help them some of the insight that I've gotten or learned from the environment to provide to them so they can do their planning and strategic missions and look at some things to try to invest in that area to provide whatever needs the culture or the people possibly needs, really. So in about April 10th, 2010, I was in the back of an MRAP. And unfortunately, I'm a big guy, 6'1". At the time I deployed, I was 240 pounds and a lot more strong than I am now. But if you've ever been in an MRAP, it's kind of like a mini Connex box with bench seats, and they do have harnessed seats, harnessed seatbelts and whatnot. But unfortunately, when you're a big boy and you've got all your gear on, your flak jacket or flak vest, and all your ammo pouches and your grenades and all your stuff that you're going on missions with, those straps don't fit so around at us big guys. So I was sitting in the back with the captain, and we were heading out on a special operation, working with some amazing guys out of one of the COBs that were close to his company fob, to do some things along the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan to look at infill, exfil routes for, enemy activity, Taliban specifically in the Hig and the Haqqani. So we're sitting in the back, and the captain and I are having a conversation, and I think we heard over the radio there's a possible firefight, and I know PFC, who's driving, young PFC who's driving the MRAP, he got a little excited. So I'm sure he decided to kind of take off a little bit faster than probably what we should have been. And he kind of hit something in the road, road bump. I'm not quite sure. Of course, I was in the back. I can't really see. Unfortunately, when he hit that, the force in the back end was bad enough that it elevated me out of my seat, where I struck my head. Even though I did have my helmet on, it still made me see stars. And when I came back down, all that weight from my upper body just kind of torqued just right. So it just, something in my back just like popped. It was crazy. It was just like, oh my God. Instantaneously I had just like a thunderous shot of like a jolt that went right down my leg and right to my testicle area. And I was like, kind of disbelief of what was going on. But one, being a Marine and now an officer, I couldn't let any of the soldiers know that it hurt. The captain and everybody asked me, okay? And I said, yeah, I'm fine. Just kind of, I hit my head. I'm all right. I'll be okay. And I remember when we made our first stop, we were picking up the people that were coming on the mission with us. And I remember getting out of the MRAP going, oh my God. It felt like someone had just kicked me, right in my groin. And I was just like, oh, that's just horrible. So long story short, I kept going. So April 10th is when that incident occurred. After that mission, and a couple of things that happened on that mission where I kind of fell down a hill, and, it just happens to many of us because, the terrain over there was sometimes hard, rough to get around. So I continued to do my mission. I continued to go to COBs and work with the companies, fly back and forth, hump all this gear around, do what I want. The sad reality of it is each time I went on a mission, when I came back, I was walking around the COB like I was, a grandpa, bent hunchback, and almost using my M4 as a friggin' cane. And I'd go see the doc, and they would hit me with tramadol, is it codeine, and whatever pain meds they could give me, as much as I could pop. Obviously I didn't have any Percocet or something really good, but those things they didn't give to me. So 3 months later, about June, beginning of June, I started talking to the battalion about saying, hey, stuff's not right. I'm struggling at moving. I'm hunchback. I'm just hurting. Matter of fact, I remember a funny story is I gave a battalion briefing to the battalion commander, and I was going through our slide deck of talking about our areas of responsibility, and talking about specifically POO sites, points of enemy ordnance, where they have, where we could dictate potentially where they could be launching from and where they possibly want to hit. And I'll never forget that during that briefing, I'd happened to get a hold of some Percocets, and I had popped, I don't know how many, but during my briefing, I think when a slide came up and it said POO sites, I just started cracking up laughing. And I'll never forget the colonel. He looks at me and he goes, Stack, what's going on? And all the other officers in the room are just dead silent. Even the ones that are on listening to the briefing, the company commanders. Without hesitation, I turn and, sir, POO's just funny. And he just looked at me, and everybody else was just like struggling to kind of stay with it. And I'll never forget what the battalion commander said to me. He's like, "You know what, Stack? I don't know if I like you better this way or the other way, but you're pretty damn funny this way." So great story. So, anyways, I continue to tell them, hey, this is going on. And I know I woke up one morning, and I um, could hardly feel my legs. It was a struggle. So finally, they got me on a bird, helicopter, flew me to Bagram. In Bagram is where I saw a couple doctors. And the doctor said, yeah, you shouldn't be here. And they looked at me like, when did this happen? And I kind of, I told them what the date, and I told them that I just, I couldn't go back. It was just, I just couldn't. I had to be there. It's important to me. So, and it's like that. And most of you veterans will understand. You just, you're there for a mission. You don't want to quit on your brothers and sisters. You're there, your job. You're doing your job, and you have pride. So finally, the decision was made. They sent me to Landstuhl in Germany. In Landstuhl, I saw a civilian doctor there where he just, again, he looked at me and goes, "What the hell are you doing here? Why are you still here?" And he understood, and I explained it to him, and he said, "I got to get you out of here. You got to get back to Bliss or back to Mainside or one of the facilities that does neurology, and we got to get a MRI of your back as soon as possible." So I'm about to talk kind of a tough story, and one of the things that I outside of PTSD and TBI and the few things that acronyms that I was diagnosed with, one of the things I do suffer from pretty bad depression, and here's kind of where it stems from. And if I get emotional, you'll understand why, I hope. And you can make fun of it if you want. I get it. So because of my injuries to my back, they didn't really feel to put me on a civilian flight because I couldn't sit. Probably would have been comfortable within those seats. So they put me on a C5, and in that C5, I sat along the side. And as I was sitting there, and they strapping me in and getting me comfortable, putting stuff around me to support myself, they started pushing in the gurneys. And I there's probably about 7 gurneys on each side of the plane, running parallel to the walls. And there was a big space in the middle where the doctors and nurses and staff could go through. So the hardest part, I believe it was about, I think it was a 17, I'm not sure how long the flight was. I really, honestly, on this really long flight. And here I am with this blown out back, let's just say. And right in front of me are these young soldiers who are missing arms, legs. One member was missing both arms and both legs. And right next to me happened to be a mother, about 2 seats over from me, holding her son's hand, who was obviously missing his leg. And I'll never forget, even to this day, the immense guilt in my soul of how I felt. Here's these guys that gave, the ultimate sacrifice, and here's this Sally with a hurt back. So needless to say, it was a long flight. So, and unfortunately, we had to make an emergency touchdown in Canada because one of the members had flatlined, and they had to get him to somewhere into a facility as fast as possible. And to this day, I don't know if the military member passed away, but it was still very, very difficult flight that I still to this day struggle with, based upon it, of the guilt factor, so to speak, not so to speak, the guilt factor. So, then from them, I went to Bethesda. They decided that the best place to send me was Fort Bliss, where they had a really good neurology department. Um, you know, so I was checked into the Warrior Battalion there. I did my MRIs, all that stuff. And it was a strange, strange feeling of going through all that. Being there and not being near my family, not being near my wife. One of the harsh realities that comes from that, outside of dealing with yourself and trying to get healthy and get better, is how the military tends to treat you while you're in that environment, especially when you don't really have the physical or the visual injuries. A lot of people tend to judge. A lot of people tend to, think, oh, yeah, he's just, it, obviously you're not missing an arm, so you can't be hurt. So it was a struggle. One of the biggest things that it was a tough part being there, because I had to fight with the battalion outside of getting my MRI, where they pretty much told me, yeah, you've got a couple blown discs, about 4 to say at least, the L4, L5, S1, and S2, which, if any of you know, that most of those discs, the nerve by those discs controls your your legs, your testicle area, and your your area, and it was just bad. So I figured out a way to try to jump on a plane every weekend to get back and see my wife, to try to feel a little bit comfortable. The struggle was, one, being away from my family. The other struggle was trying to assimilate back to main side. And the biggest struggle was the way the whole, military was treated. One group I really want to give the most amazing props to is the Wounded Warrior Battalion, or sorry, Wounded Warrior, WWP, Wounded Warrior Project. Wow, couldn't say that. When I was medevac back to Landstuhl, Germany, I came back with what was pretty much on my back. I had no uniforms, no other underwear, nothing. And I remember when I had got there, after I checked in, I went through this little store that was run by the Wounded Warrior Project. And you know what? Those people gave me everything. Underwear, socks, which, underwear and socks are like a military member's most precious items to feel better about. But they gave us comforting blankets, clothes, warm soap, toothbrush, everything. And it was just strange to me, because here I am on a military facility, but they didn't offer anything, right? So the next thing is being a guardsman, reservist. It's, you're not full duty, even though you're on full orders. I had talked to the Warrior Battalion that I was put at, and I begged with them to send me to San Diego, because San Diego had a neuro center. So I can't speak, neurological center at Balboa Naval Medical Center, and it was very close to my family. And there was a Wounded Warrior Battalion there, and so what's hilarious is I petitioned the major there. She said, "Well, we have to, go to a board and do the process," which, I got it. In the meantime, I had to kind of just deal with my situation as best I could through the medical. But I tell you, the pain meds were the best, because the military will issue you a bottle of Percocet, oxycodone at that time in 2010. I mean, I couldn't have been happier when I was walking around as high as a kite. The one time in my whole military career that I was actually high, so to speak, right? Legally by their by them, right? So I fought and fought and fought, and it was just like, oh my God, it was crazy fighting them to get back to my family. So eventually I won, and after really upsetting a lot of people and really calling a major big time on the carpet, which probably should have gotten a first lieutenant in trouble. But I guess they realized at that point in my life, I really didn't care. I just wanted to be with my wife because I was just struggling immensely. So I was sent back to San Diego, and what's funny is I checked in the Wounded Warrior Battalion there, and then I checked into Balboa. And amidst going through, looking at the MRIs and going through the doctor's appointment, they're like, "Oh, we'll try this and we'll try that. And we'll try to see what we can do. The last thing we want to do is fuse your 4 vertebrae." I didn't really want to do that either because it didn't, make me feel too good about fusing. So basically, I spent time there, and then going through the appointments, seeing all the different things that were going on with my body, and dealing with the emotional side of it because I was really struggling emotionally, especially being at home. When you get back, you're driving like a madman because you're the fear factor of what you were dealing with over in country, and you're just way more aggressive. That PTSD kicks in immensely, and things are just like amplified. Your anxiety levels and everything in you is just like tenfold. And you're trying to assimilate back to your reality, which is life. So it was a struggle, to say the least. And the other struggle is here I am. They checked me in. They brought me back to work at the battalion where I was stationed, or where my unit was in San Diego, to go in and check in to make sure I was going to my appointments, and they were there to give me whatever work. And I'll tell you, that didn't last long. I struggled. They denied me a promotion to captain because I was injured. I couldn't be in combat, and I showed them the regulations that they're wrong. They didn't care. The colonel said, "Nope, not going to give anybody a promotion that can't be deployable." Interesting. So I fought that, and then I'll never forget one day that a new I think it was brigade commander stepped in, and he walked into an office, and the major goes, "Hey, it's new brigade commander." I'm like, "What's up?" Hey, and here you have this colonel, and you have this little lieutenant, first lieutenant, just like, whatever, who are, I didn't really care. And I think it was that day, the major that I was working for, he's like, "You know what, Stack, I think you should probably just go home and call me and let me know how you're doing, because you're probably going to get in trouble here." So that's how it worked. They sent me home, and boy, was that fun. Outside of having a bottle and a half of Percocet and oxycodone, while I was home every day, I was playing Call of Duty to get my war in. Along with that, which at the time my wife didn't know, as soon as she left for work in the morning, if I didn't have an appointment or I didn't have anywhere to go, as I told people, it was a rough time in my life. I started popping anywhere from 8 to 10 to 12 Percocets throughout the day, drinking probably a bottle plus of vodka that I get a hold of, and just eating whatever I wanted to eat, and playing Call of Duty all day until my wife got home, where at that point I was able to sober up, make her dinner, and be like, "Hey, how you doing?" and be perfectly functional. So during my home stay, I'll tell you, all you people out there that want the government to control medical, well, here's a couple of things I can tell you about. The military, you'd assume it's the best quality, everything. They do a great job, and they try. But unfortunately, amidst my issues of what I was going through, somehow I got lost in the system for about 6 months. Nobody ever called, no appointments, nothing happened. And for me, I was home, doing what I want to do, per se, high as a kite, and didn't really care. So I didn't really take care of myself. I was self-medicating, so at least I was functional. And every day was an absolute struggle. I know that I would try to get up in the morning and go to the gym and work out. And I think amidst my workouts, I would just break out in tears. and just struggle because I just wasn't the same human being that I used to be. Everything hurt. I wasn't as strong. It was just life wasn't. It was just strange. Everything was different, and it just I couldn't mountain bike anymore. I wasn't back with the troops. I was depressed that I couldn't be with my soldiers and their mission. I was still hurting from seeing these people that were physically hurt, and here I am looking like I'm perfectly capable, right? And then all the bad stuff started happening where, all of a sudden the unit that I was deployed with decided to send charge sheets to me, charging me with loss of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year that I signed for. Um, then the the family readiness command kept calling my wife and asking me how she was doing while I was deployed. Here I am at home. Another wonderful thing is the great state of California wanted $10,000 back for me for my commissioning bonus, which was hilarious because I served the 18 months, but in their eyes, I didn't serve under the capacity of my MOS. 2 deployments. One deployment, the Guard deployed me as a combat engineer platoon leader. My second deployment, I made it through a little more than half the deployment. I was a intelligence officer, but because I didn't serve the whole 18 months, they wanted their $10,000 back. And then amidst my wife and I trying to have a family, well, that wasn't working either. And I started spiraling, out of control. Obviously my drinking, my drugs, the legal drugs that they were giving me, the lack of care, the lack of kind of anything. And I'll never forget that one day I went to, there's moments in your life that are just changing, hugely changing in your life. And you can remember these moments. Very well. I was at a Charger football game, hanging out. It was a preseason game, and I was hanging out with my friend Keith. And that day I'd gone and picked up hormone shots for my wife as we were trying to go through in vitro. And I had the shots on ice. My wife had called me, and she was kind of up in arms about where the shots were, why they weren't home, why are you there and don't care about so expensive for these shots? Why, and she, she had legitimate, concern, but it was just like, I snapped. I snapped. And I left the game, got straight in my vehicle, and I was probably a little intoxicated as well as probably high from some certain medications. I went home, and the whole ride home, I was seeing blood red. I was so ready to just, if anybody had done any of that time, I was going to just end it all with them, just end them. And I got home, and as soon as I saw my wife and my mother-in-law, I don't know what it was, but somehow I found the control to just flat out tell her, don't, or I will hurt you. And I went in the house, I grabbed a jacket, and I said, I need help. So I drove myself down to the Naval Battle Boda Center, to the ER. And I told the people at the front desk, if you don't lock me up right now, I'm going to hurt somebody. I don't know at what extent, but I'm going to hurt somebody. They took me serious. And then they checked me into an area of the hospital that I never, ever, ever, ever want to return. It was called the West Wing. And it was for the extreme. I for the first time, I got a reality check. I was in there, they had to have the lights on. You could only have one blanket, one pillow. You could only sleep a certain time of hours, and then they took those things away. Everything was restricted. And I was very observant of the people around me, of the way they were acting and how they were, whether they were mentally disturbed or not. I was just like, hold on a second. I'm not them. I'm not them. I know I'm better than this. So I went through the protocol, got myself checked out. And, my wife, when I got home, my wife told me, like, bottom line, if you don't get help, we're done. And it was that realization of knowing what I could have done and what a part of me wanted to do, and that how much I know I would lose, especially her, and what she had been there for me. I got help. And I started seeing a lot of the therapy, explaining, what's going on. I did some virtual reality training as well. Amidst that, it's still such a struggle. And I'm hoping that many others will lock on to or see this video and kind of hear what I'm talking about. And again, none of our experiences are the same. Everybody's different and everybody sees it in a different light. But I'd love to have some great conversations. And the big thing is, every time something hits you and tries to push you down, you know what? You got to pick your chin up. You got to pick your chin up and persevere through. And what's sad is many of our military members don't have that person that's there to really be there, whether in whatever support capacity they are. And that was my wife, and to this day, as much as you struggle with marriage, it's the toughest job in the world. Still alive today is because of her. Everything that she is, everything that she has been and did for me to help me get through as best I can. Sadly, it's taking me, February 2010, and I've finally really opened up to the public. Returned to my civilian job in 2013, which I probably should have waited another year or so, but it was a long, hard road. Military didn't make it easy, but finally I got my things, and I'm hoping that people out there want to talk, and I want to continue with some conversations and about how the military has kind of treated me. And I'm not here to look for sympathy. I'm not looking for anybody to feel bad for me. I want to establish good conversation. And like I said, if I can reach that one or two that feel like that the life you're at the end of your rope, I'm here. I want to talk. I want to open dialogue, because whether you're a military member, police officer, or a teacher, or whatever your capacity is in life of what you found, the easiest way is to quit on yourself. And quitting on yourself, you hurt way more people. Way more people. And there's so many of us out there that have a story to tell. I want to talk to you. I want to hear you. I want to help you. I was one of those, and I still am. I'm not perfect. I struggle day to day. Even today, I struggle. My close friends sometimes don't really understand me. And I'm hoping maybe some of these videos that my close friends will watch, and they'll kind of understand why I'm kind of standoffish or a bit distant. It's hard. It's really hard to associate sometimes, because there's a lack of trust with a lot of things. And, I struggle immensely with myself, with the depression, with PTSD. And I think as of lately, I think the TBI of many of hits I've taken on my head and the explosions I've been around, I think with my memory and many other things are taking tolls. So again, Next time I come online, I want to talk about some more of the things that during my wonderful medical process that the military continued to do to me, whether it be good or whether it be bad. Talk about some support things I went through. And then I also want to just continue to look for those people. To all my veterans, all my guys and brothers and sisters who are currently serving, much love to you all, respect, and just know we're all out there for each other and we need each other. So for tonight, it's stack out.